I filed for divorce. Don't even dream of getting the property. The house is now in my mom's name. The car and business are in my brother's. Goodbye, loser. From today you're broke. That was my husband's message, his smug farewell. He thought he was the smartest man alive. Thought he'd trapped me. But 24 hours later, police knocked on his door. My name is Maya Ellis, I'm 32. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. The kitchen echoed with his voicemail, his triumphant broadcast that he'd divested me of everything. We'd argued before, yes, but never like that. Never that public, cruel, or final. He thought the legal paperwork he'd forged one sleepy Sunday morning would be the last word. He was wrong. Because he'd underestimated two things I'd quietly built: records and patience. When he left for a meeting that afternoon, chest high with victory, I didn't call a lawyer. I did something quieter first. I sat at our dining table and made a list. Account numbers, transfer dates, texts where he asked me to cover this one. Time-stamped emails promising reimbursement for business expenses. I dug up receipts, mortgage payments I'd made, car insurance statements in my name, and the original business registration listing me as co-owner. Every favor he'd ever asked for I'd logged. Not out of spite, but because I knew one day someone might need proof that I'd been keeping the lights on. That night, I recorded his voicemail and forwarded it to an attorney I'd met months earlier at a nonprofit board meeting. A woman who respected facts and moved faster than gossip. I attached screenshots of the forged documents he'd bragged about. The email subject line was short: possible fraud. Please advise. Then I packed a small bag. In the morning the police would come, not for me but for him. By dawn my phone buzzed with a single email. Subject: proceeding. My attorney had wasted no time. Attached was a list of immediate steps: asset verification, injunction filings, and one bold instruction: do not confront him directly. Let the law do the talking. For the first time in months I obeyed silence. By 8 a.m. I was parked outside our joint business, the one he'd just transferred into his brother's name. Through the tinted window, I watched him swagger across the lot, coffee in hand, that practiced smirk of invincibility plastered on his face. Inside, my lawyer's paralegal was already at the county clerk's office, filing an emergency stay on all transfers pending investigation. Every asset he'd moved, house, car, business, was temporarily frozen. He didn't know it yet, but his little empire had just been put on pause. At 11:32 a.m. Detective Alvarez called. Mrs. Ellis, thank you for the recordings and financial records. We'll be reaching out to your husband this afternoon. Please remain available for a statement. I exhaled, shaky but grounded. That evening I came home to 20 missed calls and 5 voicemails from him. I didn't listen to any. Instead, I placed my phone face down, poured a glass of water, and turned on music, something I hadn't done since the marriage began unraveling. At 9:14 p.m., my lawyer texted one line that slowed my pulse to a calm rhythm. Search warrant approved. He'll get his knock tomorrow. Tomorrow wasn't revenge. It was restoration. For once he'd hear silence not as surrender but as strategy. At exactly 7:02 a.m. Detective Alvarez messaged again. Officers en route for property verification. Please remain home. I didn't need to imagine his face when that knock landed. The same front door he'd slammed in mine when I left would now open to police with a warrant bearing his name. I brewed coffee, steady hands for once. Justice didn't feel cinematic. It smelled like paperwork and burnt toast. By 8:15 another call. Private number. I let it ring. Then came the voicemail. Maya, please. They're saying fraud. I just need to talk. You don't understand. This was all a miscommunication. Delete. My lawyer called next. They found the documents, she said. Every transfer tied to your signature has metadata linking back to his devices. You're clear, Maya. He's in trouble. Clear. The word landed like oxygen. Around noon, a local news alert pinged my screen. Business owner under investigation for asset fraud after divorce filing. His photo sat beneath the headline. Smirk replaced by exhaustion. Group chats from mutual friends exploded, some defending him, others stunned. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. At sunset, I stood by my window watching the police cars still parked outside our former business. The sirens were gone, but blue lights flickered against the glass like ghosts of every warning I'd ignored. Ethan, a colleague, texted me. Justice isn't revenge. It's peace with paperwork. I smiled faintly. Exactly. That night as I turned off my phone, I realized something. I didn't want him punished. I just wanted the truth to have a voice, and now it did. The next morning, headlines flooded social media. Local entrepreneur under investigation for financial misconduct in divorce case. People who once toasted our marriage now whispered in digital corners. I sat in my small rented apartment, sunlight spilling through the blinds, scrolling without emotion. My ex-husband Daniel had always loved being admired. Now every notification was his downfall. A knock on my door startled me. Detective Alvarez again. Polite, professional, direct. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, "we've seized the property transfer records. You'll be contacted about restitution. Most assets were moved fraudulently, so everything he tried to hide will likely revert to your name. And more importantly, you're officially listed as the complainant, not the accused. You did everything right." After he left, I stood there for a moment, leaning against the door. Relief didn't come like fireworks. It came quietly, like exhaling after years of holding your breath. Later I drove past the old house. Police tape fluttered in the wind. And for the first time in a long time I didn't feel broken. I felt whole. The wind brushed pale yellow leaves against the brick facade. The windows were dark, the front lawn overgrown. For all his talk about winning, Daniel had lost the one thing he could never buy: control. My phone buzzed. A message from his mother. "I don't know what you told the police, but you've destroyed our family." I didn't reply. She had believed every lie he'd ever told. That I was unstable, manipulative, emotional. But emotional didn't mean weak. That night I sent my lawyer one final document. A request to donate half of the business proceeds, once recovered, to a women's legal aid fund. Let Daniel keep his silence. I had purpose now. And purpose, I'd learned, is louder than revenge. By Friday, chaos rippled through Daniel's entire network. His brother's bank accounts were frozen. His mother's new property title was nullified. His once thriving business was now under state review. I didn't celebrate. I just went back to work. The office felt lighter that day. People smiled differently, not with pity but with quiet respect. The woman they thought would crumble had instead documented, strategized, and outmaneuvered. At lunch, my coworker Jenna slid into the chair across from me. "You really did it," she whispered. "You actually fought back." "I didn't fight him," I said, stirring my coffee. "I just stopped protecting him." That evening my lawyer called. "Daniel's bail hearing is scheduled for Monday," she said. "He's trying to claim the documents were signed with your consent. Do you have that email chain we discussed?" I smiled faintly. "The one he forgot to delete before forwarding?" "Already sent." "Good," she said. "Then you've just sealed it." After the call, I opened an old photo album labeled Life Before. Our wedding smiles. Vacations. Dinners. In every photo he stood at the center, perfectly framed. I was always slightly blurred, half in focus, half forgotten. I closed the album. That chapter was over. By the weekend, Daniel's name was trending again, this time with words he'd never imagined beside it. Fraudulent, controlling, exposed. At sunset I walked barefoot on the cool grass of my small backyard. The world was quiet again. For years I'd tried to prove I was enough for him. Now I realized I'd always been more than enough. He just wasn't capable of seeing it, and that blindness had cost him everything. Monday. The courtroom smelled of cold marble and tension. Daniel stood across from me in his tailored suit, his charm cracked into something desperate. The judge's gaze was sharp, cutting through ego and pretense alike. My lawyer spoke calmly. "Your Honor, we have verifiable proof of forged transfers and fraudulent intent committed after the divorce filing." Daniel's smirk faltered. His attorney fumbled through papers, muttering objections that fell flat. Then came the evidence. The recordings, the voicemail where he bragged about moving assets, the digital trail linking every transaction to his devices. When the forensic accountant displayed the timestamp metadata, Daniel's face drained of color. "Mr. Ellis," the judge said evenly, "this is deliberate deception under oath. Do you understand the severity?" He nodded mutely. I didn't look away. For years, I'd been conditioned to shrink when he spoke, to soothe when he shouted, to carry the guilt he deserved. Today I simply existed, unshaken. My lawyer rested her hand lightly on my arm. He's facing charges of fraud and asset concealment, she said softly. You'll retain ownership of all joint property. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was closure, stitched with exhaustion. Outside, reporters swarmed. Mrs. Ellis, any comment on your husband's arrest? I smiled faintly. There's nothing left to say. The truth spoke for itself. That evening I drove past the police station where his luxury car sat impounded, wrapped in caution tape. I parked for a moment and whispered to the night. Goodbye, Daniel. Enjoy your empire of lies. Then I drove home, not victorious, just finally free. Weeks passed. Each headline that mentioned his name brought a strange mix of sadness and release. The man who once bragged about control now faced 3 criminal charges: fraud, perjury, and property concealment. The court appointed a trustee to handle asset redistribution. I didn't even attend the second hearing. My lawyer's update was simple. All properties reverted. You are now the sole legal owner. That night I walked through the old house, my house, in silence. Dust floated through the sunset like memory fragments. The walls still smelled faintly of his cologne, and for a moment the weight of everything hit me. This was the same living room where I'd once begged him to listen, to treat me like a partner instead of a pawn. The same kitchen where he told me, "You'll never make it without me." And yet here I was, not just surviving but standing tall in the ruins of his arrogance. I opened the windows wide. Cold autumn air rushed in. It felt like an exorcism. Ethan stopped by later with takeout and 2 glasses of wine. So, he smiled, what does freedom taste like? I thought for a moment. Like silence that doesn't scare me anymore. He nodded. That's peace, Maya. The rare kind. We sat on the empty floor eating noodles from paper boxes, laughing about things that weren't about him. For the first time the house didn't feel haunted. It felt mine. Before bed I texted my lawyer. Thank you for believing me before anyone else did. Her reply came instantly. You believed yourself first. That's what changed everything. 1 year later. I stood in the same courthouse. Not for another battle, but to sign the final paperwork confirming Daniel's conviction. He'd accepted a plea deal, avoiding a trial that would have dragged on for years. The restitution order granted me full ownership of the business and home, along with damages for emotional and financial distress. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was peace. Outside, reporters waited again. Mrs. Ellis, what would you say to women who feel powerless in their marriages? I smiled softly. Document everything. Believe your instincts. And never confuse silence with peace. The clip went viral within hours. Messages poured in. Women thanking me, men apologizing for not noticing their wives' quiet suffering. I didn't feel like a hero. Just someone who finally stopped apologizing for existing. That evening I drove to the lake near my old college campus. The place I used to go when life felt too heavy. The sunset burned gold across the water. I took out the last piece of paper Daniel ever gave me, our marriage certificate, and fed it to the wind. It broke apart, drifting until it was gone. When I got home, Ethan was waiting on the porch with 2 mugs of coffee. So, he grinned, does freedom still taste like silence? I laughed. No, I said, watching the steam rise. Now it tastes like peace and maybe a little victory. As night settled, I looked at the glowing sign above my business. Ellis Legal Consulting. Built from ashes but mine entirely. He thought he took everything. But he only taught me how to keep what's mine.